Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Withdrawal, and the purpose of today's video is to talk about whether you should slow down your rate of taper if you develop difficult withdrawal symptoms while you're coming off antidepressants and benzodiazepines. This video is a two-part series, and the first part of it, I'm going to talk about people who do not have a post-acute withdrawal type injury or a protracted withdrawal. I'm going to talk about people who just want to come off these medications and they're not having significant problems, because that's an easier situation. So for someone who doesn't have an injury, between 5 and 10% cuts every 2 to 4 weeks is a good place to start. And then when you get towards the bottom, you slow the speed down. And what do I mean towards the bottom? When you get around to what the lowest effective dose is, if this is Lexapro, that might be 5 milligrams. If it's Xanax, that might be 0.5 milligrams. Whatever the lowest dose is typically the one that people are started on. It's called the hyperbolic taper. So if you're in that position, here's what you should do. The process of tapering yourself down gradually in this way is that you want to remove that agent that's been in your brain, which is causing all of these compensatory changes in there. The opposing systems that were compensating for the presence of that drug can really be exposed. If this is with an antidepressant, you may have more irritability. If it's a benzodiazepine, it's very much the same. There's more excitation and anxiety that comes out. The process of going down in this way is really to do it gradually, allow your brain to be exposed to these changes and then readapt to them. And withdrawal is not supposed to be easy. What I tell people is you're really looking for mild to moderate symptoms as you're going down. If they hit severe, and by severe, it's a judgment call, but usually what I like to think of is you're not able to do the things that you normally want to do. If you're unable to go to work, if you're unable to fulfill your duties, that's severe. And if you are someone who does not have one of these protracted withdrawal type issues, that's when you need to slow your rate of taper down. If you're going at 10%, you should probably consider going down at 5% next time. And that's how I would advise someone to continue. Moving on to the next part. Now we're going to talk about people who are in the unlucky category where they've developed a post-acute withdrawal symptom from the antidepressants or a protracted withdrawal from the benzodiazepines. This is actually where it gets a lot trickier, because those types of neurological injuries, their nature is that they flare up randomly over time. After someone has this injury, they have this typical pattern of waves and windows where you can go for a few months where you're moderately uncomfortable because of the injury, but it's tolerable. Then you can get thrown into periods where for roughly 2 months or so, you have really severe symptoms. And that's the wave. You want to get the taper over and done with. A lot of the times the people who are on these drugs, they just want to be off. Sometimes this process is going to take 18 months, 2 years, something like that. When you slow the rate of your taper, essentially you could be extending it for another year, a year and a half. So there's big consequences there, I think. What I guess you don't want to do is needlessly slow the rate of the taper down. And so how could this happen? Let's say you're progressing quite nicely, 5% cuts every 3 to 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden you do a cut and 4 or 5 days later, you start feeling really bad and you end up in one of these waves, and then you say, oh my God, am I tapering too fast? And obviously the trauma about it comes up, because a lot of people have developed these post-acute withdrawal problems because they were like rapidly detoxed off the medications. And then they start to say 5% cuts, that is way too fast. This is really tricky, and this is just how I approach it with my patients. What I usually tell people to do in this situation is let's just stop and let's just hold and let's just see how long it takes for these symptoms to resolve. And sometimes that could be two months, sometimes it could be up to 3 months, just waiting for things to simmer down. If they're comfortable with it, and if they're on the same page as me where they're saying, you know what, I think we're moving at a reasonable pace and I don't want to slow it down anymore because I'd like to be off, I would invite them to actually try that cut again after they've stabilized. Let's try do another 5% cut. And if they tolerate it, then that means, at least to me, that flare up that they had, it was more likely that it was a coincidental wave that just came in the background and there was no need to slow the rate of taper. But if we did that 5% cut again, and then that similar pattern emerged where a couple of days later, bang, big flare up of symptoms, and it lasted, it's more than just an anxiety reaction, because that's pretty common as well. People can become very anxious. But if it's this thing that lasts, longer than a couple of days, then I would say, okay, let's kind of slow things down a little bit. Let's put you on 3% cut or something like that. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Tell me what you think about that method. I try and be mindful of getting people off in a safe way, but also making it no longer than it needs to be. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching.